As I've mentioned, I spent the week at Unity Village for the 109th Annual Congress of the International New Thought Alliance. And the topic was Evolve, what's new in New Thought? And the Congress was wonderful. The idea was we brought together speakers from all of the New Thought organizations to talk about all sorts of different things and what's going on for them. There was discussion and presentations about social justice. There was a fellow who talked about humor and bringing humor into ministry, which was just a lot of fun. There was a panel that talked about the matriarchs of New Thought and the women who have made this this teaching happen. There was discussion of transformation and change. There was even a panel where the moderator said the idea was for everybody to learn something, and the topic was Thomas Troward. I was the moderator, and I was delighted that I learned a few things about Thomas Troward, including that the British pronounce it Troward instead of Troward. Some of the other things that about Thomas Troward, which were new to me and came from the other panelists, is that he had a mystical experience. And during his life when he was living in India, he had a mystical experience which propelled him to share even more richly and deeply and fully the teachings that have been so foundational in all of the New Thought teachings. He was an inspiration to a lot of the different teachings. And in fact, he was involved in all of the New Thought organizations at their inception. Divine Science, which was founded about the same time as Unity. When the International New Thought Alliance was finally founded in June of 1914, it was a meeting in London. It was the first one that they had done outside of the United States. And he raised his hand and he became a vice president of the International New Thought Alliance at its founding. And they made national chapters in different countries. And he also raised his hand and was the president of the chapter in England. Somebody else who's on the panel, who's just a huge fan of Troward, pointed out that Troward actually listed in the Edinburgh Lectures the 5 steps of practical prayer in order, which I also had not been aware of. So there's lots of wonderful things that even if we think we know it all, we get to experience more deeply. And what I came away with is that New Thought is a practice that can be done both inwardly and outwardly. And inwardly, we know that this is a creative process. And we acknowledge that there is one infinite creative power that creates everything, and that includes each of us, and that we're using that power to create our lives. And we sometimes use the agricultural metaphor of planting seeds in the rich, fertile, creative soil and allowing them to come into being. And I think I might have mentioned sometime earlier this year in the spring that I was starting a garden. And you might remember I had some seeds. This is one of the seeds that I planted. And in my garden in the backyard, I planted 8 of these seeds. And I planted them 4 really close together and 4 more really close together because I was going to have a little competition. And after a couple of weeks, whichever one seemed to be growing the best, I would leave, and the rest of them I would pull out. And it turns out that 3 of them looked like they were good candidates. So I transplanted one of them, and I got 3 zucchini plants. And just so you know that a seed idea can turn into something wonderful, this came out of the garden this week. This is a 4-pound zucchini. And one of the interesting things about the 4-pound zucchini is, among other things, you know what's in there? More zucchini seeds. Yeah. So the creative process continues to unfold and continues to reveal itself. And it's easy to point to farming and agriculture and gardening and say, oh, well, yeah, that's the way it happens. That's the way it always happens. That is the inward process that New Thought is talking about, that creative process of taking an idea, planting it into that creative soil, making way for it to grow into something wonderful, and then enjoying whatever it is that's showing up. The outward process in New Thought is about taking this idea, this teaching, this philosophy, this awareness of the creative process, this ability to show up as a huge zucchini in our life or in our garden. How do you talk to people about what you do on Sunday mornings? Do you talk to what you do on Sunday mornings with other people? And if you were going to do that, how would you do that? one of the things that came to my attention, and it's the transformation that gets to happen when we're willing to look at ourselves and share ourselves and allow what's coming into the world to be different based on a new way of thinking, was the story of Dr. Johnny Coleman. Now, Johnny Coleman got a phone call, and I think this was in probably the 1950s, might have been the 1940s, and the phone call basically said, you have 6 months to live. And Johnny Coleman decided that was not going to be the case, and she found the teaching that is the unity teaching, which is that you can heal your life. Myrtle Fillmore had basically healed her life. She went from being the sickly kid to being a very powerful creative force. And so Johnny Coleman learned what she was doing and healed herself, and then she wanted to go deeper into the unity teaching. So she actually went to Unity Village to take classes with the Fillmores and the rest of the people at Unity Village. The situation in the 1950s was that she, being a black woman from Chicago going to Missouri, which is where Unity Village was not allowed to stay in any of the facilities where the rest of the students were allowed to stay. So they eventually found a little cottage where some of the help lived, and Johnny Coleman was allowed to stay there. Fast forward to 2024, as they're reinventing what Unity Village is and what the Unity movement means, and owning and acknowledging their past, they've refurbished a bunch of the houses. The Fillmores lived in one of the houses on the campus. Their kids lived in other houses, and they've turned them into Airbnbs. And the one that they're working on now is the Johnny Coleman Cottage, which is where she stayed, and they're turning that into a property that they can rent, because they're acknowledging that what they did to Johnny Coleman that was the way things were done then, but we're not doing it that way now. There is transformation and change possible for us. And one of their new motto is unapologetically inclusive. And I've actually got that on my t-shirt today. Unity, unapologetically inclusive. Went as far as to get a coffee mug so that I can use that on the days that I'm not wearing the t-shirt. And that is a bold statement. Unapologetically inclusive. So, in the outward world, as you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with a situation, and by the way, Johnny Coleman was dealing with embedded racism, and she was in the South, and she stayed the course, and she continued to do what she did, and she founded Christ Universal Temple, which is a huge facility in Chicago. I was there a couple of years ago. That's where we had the 107th INTA Congress. And she also founded the Universal Foundation for Better Living. And everything they do is for better living. So they've got the magazine with daily inspirations for better living. And her whole idea was to be that presence, that voice of change, that voice of transformation, and invite that into the world. And along the way, the organization she was involved in has become unapologetically inclusive. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. There's so many inspiring things that happened at this Congress. There was a panel on social justice, and the speakers were wonderful and inspiring. And the one that was most amazing was a woman who I've known for a bunch of years. She used to be the minister who was running social media, the Facebook and Instagram pages at Unity Village. And she was then got a post as the senior minister at one of the churches in the Kansas City area, in Overland Park, Kansas, Reverend Jackie Fernandez. And she was wonderful. So she started telling this story about her grandmother. And her grandmother was an activist. And growing up, Jackie thought that it was completely normal for kids, whenever there was free time, to go to a rally, because that's what she spent her time doing. She kept on getting taken to rallies, and her grandmother took her to rallies, and it was that was a thing. So that social activism thing about wanting to bring change and be the agent of change and make something different happen in the world was something that she was involved in from day one. And when she mentioned her grandma's name and she showed us a picture of her and her grandmother, I was not immediately familiar with the name of Dolores Huerta. But Dolores Huerta was like a big deal activist. She and Cesar Chavez formed the Farm Workers Union in California and started making change happen. She has been hugely involved in making change happen all along the way. She's received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. In 2008, the first time that she was nominated for as a presidential candidate, the person who put Hillary Clinton's name into nomination was Dolores Huerta. She's been around for a while, and this is, for Jackie Fernandez, this is grandma. So those seeds of possibility, those seeds of change, they might be growing right next to you and you don't know. Open to the possibility that there is something wonderful that is going on in life for you, to you, through you, as you. Maybe it's just grandma. You think it's just grandma, but grandma is actually doing something. So Jackie told the story of a time that that Dolores came to town and she was going to be doing a presentation in the evening. She flew in first thing in the morning, and they took her to breakfast because she'd arranged to have breakfast with a local congressman. Breakfast lasted 3 hours because it turns out that the congressman's father or grandfather had been freed from prison because of the work that Dolores did. He had been unjustly imprisoned, and she made the change happen. Those little stories, they're all around. There might be somebody famous in your history. There might just be a brush with greatness that's going on. It could be something that's growing inside of you. There could be something spectacular, ready to grow and show itself in the world as you. And we're into the presidential election cycle. We've gone through the first of the conventions now. And a lot of people are wondering, oh my God, I'm getting inundated with the news, and there's all of these stories, and there's so much to worry about. And you do the hand-wringing. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what do you do? So the question is, and I've had discussions with some of you in the last couple of weeks, what do you do with the news? Because there's the possibility of getting completely sucked in and swallowed by the news, to follow it continuously and needing to pay all of that attention. And then there's the pushing away from it. We're going to avoid all of those stories because they could take us away from our experience of equilibrium. And something that Michael Bernard Beckwith said a number of years back is that he was avoiding the news until he realized that the headlines were all prayer requests. When something makes the news, it is the invitation for us to look at that and know something better. There's a transformation that's possible within each of us that can invite in something better, something bigger, something wonderful. There's a new seed that we can be planting. And everybody talks about how this election cycle is really a difficult one. And I get it. I understand. There's trauma from the last time we went through this process. And a colleague of mine, Reverend Dr. David Alexander at Spiritual Living Center in Atlanta, is starting a program. It's called My Election Intention. And what we're doing, and I'm saying we because I enlisted and I'm helping out with this thing, it is a 100-day program. It starts on the 28th of July. And what we're going to do is for those 100 days between the 28th of July and Election Day, there is a daily message of inspiration, and it's a healing message. It's not about who's going to win the election. It's about how we are going to address and release and be okay with the situation, and basically address our own trauma, the ways that we've been injured, so that we can be present to the process and we can support love unfolding, to set the soil, to fertilize and garden and weed so that something wonderful can grow. I'm not going to hold up the zucchini again. You know what I'm talking about. And we had put the phone number that you can dial. You can text the word join to that number. It's 470-784-0250. And what will happen is every day you will get a link, and you get a recorded message. They're audio messages. And the first day, the message is from Michael Bernard Beckwith. And they will be every day for 100 days going through with some luminaries from the New Thought world. You can look on the page we have on New Thought Philly about some of the people who are participating in that. I'm one of the voices that's going to be participating all the way through Election Day, and the one who's doing the last day is also, again, Michael Beckwith. And it's about being present to our own hurts and traumas, understanding how we got, or maybe not even how we got, that we got to where we are right now, that we can be okay in spite of whatever it is that has been challenged to us, and then being present to somebody else. to be present to somebody else who's working through their own hurts and traumas and challenges and difficulties. Because transformation is not only possible, that is what happens. That is the way this teaching works. This teaching is about growth. It's about transformation. It's about taking a seed idea and having the willingness to till the soil, to prepare the ground, to weed out what's not necessary, what's not desired there, to plant the seed, to nurture and cultivate it, and make sure that it has everything that it needs, and then get it out of the way as it grows into something spectacular. That's the process. That's what's going on in New Thought. And if, as I'm saying this, you think, I'm not changing anything, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, that's okay. And that's an invitation to look at what it is that's causing you to say that. And if you immediately raise your hand and say, I'm jumping in, I'm doing that too, look at that too. Is that, I want to have some activity so I get distracted from the things that are actually bothering me. Either way is okay. What we want to do is be able to look at where we are, understand the path that we've been on, identify that which we want to be experiencing next, and invite that into the world. The other thing that came up at the INTA Congress, once again reinforced, in addition to how powerful this teaching that we have is, it's the fundamental notion that this is a unity teaching. This is a teaching of oneness. There is one creative power, one presence, one love that shares itself as everything. There are not two. There is no devil, there is no evil, there is no opposition to that good unfolding. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that light is obstructed by something and it appears as darkness, but that's not because whatever's blocking the light has a force of its own. It's just there. It's just there, and we can enjoy the shade if we want to. We can enjoy the fact that it's not bright sunshine all the time. We can enjoy the fact that we have a little bit of respite and then get back to what we're doing. There is a cycle in those experiences, and it has no power of its own. You take a candle and you put it in the biggest, deepest cavern in the world, and suddenly the darkness in that cavern goes away because there's a light present. And there's not enough darkness in the universe to compete with the light. That's not the way it works. Once the light is there, the light is shining. And there are religions and spiritual practices that absolutely rely on having a devil. They need something to fight against. And that's okay. And when we encounter somebody like that, we don't have to run away from them. We don't have to fight with them. We also don't have to agree with them. We can know that there is one power and presence, and if they need to have a power for it to fight with, if they need to have a force for evil that's in their belief system that they can tussle with, then support them in winning. You know, get to the end of the match and win, and then move on, because there is that love unfolding. So there are lots of different possibilities for each of us. The first thing that I would suggest, go ahead and sign up for for my election intention. When last I heard, there were 600 or 700 people who had signed up for it. And we've mentioned before that a small number of highly committed people have the power to bring huge change into the world. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is how it happens. This is not about an outcome. This is about a process. This is about being present and peaceful as the process unfolds. So see what happens for you. Bring some love into the world. Be that bright light of goodness that is the truth of what you are. Let it shine. You deserve it. And so does everyone in the world around you. So it is.